There's a kind of weight that doesn't show up on a scale. You can't see it, you can't measure it, but you feel it every single day, every time you walk past a certain door and don't open it. I had a door like that. For years, I walked past it, told myself I'd deal with it later, told myself I wasn't ready, told myself it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered every single time. And then one October, a Tuesday, nothing special about it, with a cup of tea going cold on the kitchen counter and no particular plan in mind, I finally opened it. Behind that door was 30 years of my life, 30 years of birthdays and moves and losses and joy and grief, all of it sitting in boxes that had followed me from house to house without ever being opened. What I found inside changed me. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but quietly, the way real change usually happens. I'm Margaret, and today I want to take you with me through every box, every decision, every moment that made me stop and catch my breath, because I have a feeling some of you have a door just like mine, and maybe my story will help you open it. The spare room in my home had been a catch-all for as long as I could remember. When something didn't have a place, into that room it went. When we moved from our family home 15 years ago, we didn't unpack half the boxes. We just stacked them in there and told ourselves we'd sort them out later. When my mother passed, her things came to live with me, into the room. When my children grew up and left, their childhood belongings didn't go with them, into the room. That room held pieces of 5 different versions of my life, and I had been walking past it, closing the door on it, quietly resenting it for years. Now, before I tell you how the 3 days unfolded, I need to tell you something that happened on the second day, something I still think about nearly every week. I found a shoebox in the back of a closet, and what was inside it I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. I'll get to that, I promise. But first, let me tell you exactly how I prepared, because going in without a plan would have broken me by lunchtime on day 1. If stories like this are what you're looking for, real, honest, human stories about letting go and living lighter, please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. I'm so glad you're here. That shoebox. It was old. The corners had gone soft, the lid barely held its shape. A rubber band held it together, but it crumbled the moment I touched it. Inside were letters, handwritten letters on pale blue stationery with little flowers printed at the top. They were written to me during one of the darkest years of my life by someone I have loved and lost. And tucked between those letters was a photograph I was certain no longer existed. I'm going to tell you exactly what was in that box and what it meant to me. But first, let me take you back to the morning it all began, because the finding of that box only makes sense once you understand everything that came before it. Day 1. The easy things first. Day 1 had one rule, and I want you to write this down if you're planning your own clear-out. Start with what doesn't hurt. Don't begin with the photographs. Don't begin with the letters. Don't begin with the things that belong to someone you've lost. Begin with the broken lamp nobody ever fixed. Begin with the 3 sets of curtains from a house you moved out of in 2009. Begin with a stack of outdated instruction manuals for appliances you no longer own. Those things carry no emotion. They are just stuff. And clearing them creates physical space, but more importantly, it creates mental space. It tells your brain, this is possible, we are making progress, we can do this. By mid-morning, I had filled 4 bin bags with rubbish. 4 bin bags of things that had been sitting in that room for years, contributing nothing, taking up space, quietly draining the energy from the house. Out they went. And I stood in the middle of the room and felt the air change. Then I moved on to what I call the easy donations, things in good condition that I simply had no use for anymore. Old kitchen gadgets, books I'd already read and wouldn't read again, clothes that had somehow wandered into that room and hadn't been worn in a decade. I didn't agonize over any of it. The rule I gave myself, if I pick it up and my first instinct is, I don't need this, into the donation box it goes. No second guessing. First instincts in decluttering are almost always right. By the end of day 1, the floor was visible. The furniture could be reached. The room had gone from overwhelming to merely full. That felt like a miracle. If these practical steps are helpful to you, please do subscribe. Every week, I share real, honest guidance for decluttering and simplifying, and this community we're building here is something I'm incredibly proud of. I didn't sleep well the night after day one. My mind kept circling back to the room, to the boxes I hadn't opened yet, the ones with the old handwriting on the outside, the ones I knew were going to ask something of me. And that's normal. If it happens to you, don't fight it. Let your mind do what it needs to do overnight. By morning, you'll be ready. On day 2, I changed my approach entirely. Day 2 was slower, quieter. I made a bigger pot of tea. I put on soft music. I told myself there was no rush, and I meant it. My rule for emotional boxes: one at a time, with full attention. No multitasking, no trying to sort 3 things at once. One box, opened completely, given its full due, before moving to the next. The first emotional box I opened contained photographs, hundreds of them, loose prints, old developer envelopes with the dates stamped on the front, a few proper albums with sticky pages gone yellow at the edges. I sat down on the floor, right there among the boxes, and I went through every single one. And that's when the tears came. Not sad tears exactly, more like the kind that come when you are suddenly completely flooded with feeling. When 30 years of love and time press themselves against your chest all at once and ask to be acknowledged. There was a photograph of my children on a beach. They must have been 5 and 7, running toward the camera with their arms out, mouths open, laughing. There was a photograph of my husband and me on our 20th wedding anniversary. We were in a restaurant, squinting at each other through candlelight, laughing about not being able to see properly. And there was a photograph of my mother standing in her garden. She was holding a tomato she'd just picked, like it was a prize. She had her apron on, she was smiling at something off camera. She passed away 11 years ago, and there she was, right in my hands, alive and beaming in a summer 40 years gone. I want to ask you, is there a photograph you have that stops you completely every time you see it? Just takes you straight back? Tell me about it in the comments. Those stories mean the world to me. It was later that afternoon, day 2, mid-afternoon, that I found it. The shoebox. I had been working through the closet at the back of the room, and it was hidden, genuinely hidden, behind a broken suitcase, pushed into the far back corner where the light didn't quite reach. I almost missed it entirely, but something made me reach back there. And everything that happened next, I want to take you through carefully, because it is the part of this story I think about the most. Stay with me. The shoebox, Margaret's sister. The rubber band around the box crumbled the moment I touched it. That told me everything. This box had not been opened in a very long time. I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, handwritten, on pale blue stationery with small flowers printed at the top. The kind of paper you could buy in stationery shops in the 80s and 90s, before everything moved to email and nobody sent letters anymore. They were from my sister, Ruth. Ruth, who passed away 18 years ago. She had written these letters to me during one particular year, I could tell from the dates on the envelopes, a year in my late 40s when everything in my life felt like it was coming apart. My marriage was going through a terribly difficult stretch. My health had been giving me trouble. I was living 300 miles away from everyone I loved, in a town where I barely knew a soul. And Ruth wrote to me every single week that year. Every week, without fail, a pale blue envelope would arrive. I'd kept every one, carried them through every move since then in that shoebox, without ever once opening it again. And I'd completely forgotten they existed. I sat down right there on the floor of the spare room with the afternoon light coming through the window and dust motes floating in the air, and I read every letter. All of them, in order. And Ruth, she had a gift. She always had. A gift for seeing people clearly, for saying the true thing simply and without fuss. In one letter she wrote, "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, Margaret, but you have always been the strongest person I know. Not because nothing hurts you, but because you keep going anyway. This season will end, and when it does, I will be right here." She was right. The season did end, but she wasn't there when it did. She was gone before I found my footing again. And sitting on that floor, reading her words, I felt her with me in a way I hadn't in a very long time. Has something like this ever happened to you? Have you ever found something, a letter, a card, an old note, that felt like it found you at exactly the right moment? Please share it in the comments. You have no idea how much these stories mean to everyone here. And then, at the very bottom of the box, there was a photograph, face down. I picked it up and turned it over. It was Ruth and me. We looked young, early 30s, I'd say, standing in front of a lake somewhere, squinting in bright sunshine, laughing at something just off to the left of the camera. She had her arm around me. I had never seen this photograph before in my life. I don't know how it got into that box. I don't know who took it, or when, or where, but there we were, together, laughing. I held it for a long time, and when I finally set it down, I knew exactly where it was going to live for the rest of my days. If this kind of storytelling speaks to you, please subscribe if you haven't already. This community is full of people walking similar paths, and every comment and every new face here reminds me that none of us are doing this alone. Day 3. Making decisions with clarity. By day 3, the emotional waves had settled. Not gone. You don't sort through 30 years of living and come out the other side unmoved, but settled, like the morning after a storm. Things are still wet and scattered, but the air is clear and you can see properly again. And that's when I made my final decisions. Here is exactly what day 3 looked like, step by step. Step 1. Every kept item gets a real home. Not a box, not a "I'll figure it out later," a real designated place in the house. The photographs went into a proper archival photo box, organized by decade with small handwritten labels. That box now lives on the shelf in my sitting room, where I can reach it anytime I want. Ruth's letters went into a beautiful wooden box, a plain one I found at a craft shop, and that box sits on my bedroom bookshelf where I see it every single morning. My mother's apron, the one she was wearing in that garden photograph, had been sitting in a bag in that room for 11 years. 11 years it had brought me nothing, because it was hidden away where I never saw it. I washed it, I pressed it, and I hung it on a hook in my kitchen. That is where it belongs. Not in the dark, in the light where I can see it while I cook. Step 2. Donations leave the house today. Not tomorrow, today. This is one of the most important steps and one of the most skipped. The longer those donation bags sit in your hallway, the more likely you are to start second-guessing yourself and pulling things back out. On day 3, every bag went straight to my car, and I drove to the charity shop that same afternoon. Gone. Done. Someone else gets to love them now. Step 3. One final slow walkthrough. Before I called the room finished, I did one quiet walkthrough. Not looking for more things to clear, just looking at what remained. Asking myself, does everything here deserve to be here? Does this room feel like me? And for the first time in 30 years, the answer was yes. I'd love to know, is there something in your house right now that deserves a better place than where it's currently sitting? Maybe something that's been in a box for years that should be out where you can see it? Please share it in the comments. You have no idea how much these stories mean to everyone here. What Margaret learned. The room took 3 days to clear, but if I'm honest, I had been carrying it for 30 years. And here is what those 3 days taught me. I want to share it with you because I think it might be useful wherever you are in your own journey. The first thing I learned, the memory is not in the box. We hold on to things because we're afraid that if we let them go, we'll lose the memory attached to them. But I held Ruth's letters in my hands, letters I hadn't touched in nearly 2 decades, and every feeling, every memory,
every version of her that I love came rushing back instantly. The memory was never in the box. It was in me. It had been in me the whole time. The box just reminded me it was there. You are not going to lose your memories by letting go of the objects. I promise you that. The second thing I learned, some things deserve to be seen. My mother's apron sat in a bag in that room for 11 years. 11 years it brought me nothing because it was hidden away where I never saw it. I washed it, I pressed it, and I hung it on a hook in my kitchen. That is where it belongs, not in the dark, in the light where I can see it while I cook. The third thing I learned, doing this is an act of love for yourself. We are so good, those of us who have lived long and full lives, at taking care of everyone else, at putting ourselves last. Clearing that room was one of the kindest things I have ever done for myself, and I wish I had done it sooner. I want to leave you with a question today, and I hope you'll sit with it. Is there something you've been carrying, physically or emotionally, that it might be finally time to set down? You don't have to have an answer yet. Just think about it. And if you want to share, I'm right here. The spare room isn't empty now. There's a chair by the window, a lamp, a small bookshelf with the things I love most. Ruth's photograph, the one from the shoebox, is in a simple frame on that shelf where I can see it. Sometimes in the mornings I sit in that chair with my tea, and I feel like myself in there. The full version of myself, with all my years and all my stories, not weighed down by them, but held gently by the ones that matter. If you are standing in front of your own closed door right now, I want you to know you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to be brave or ready or in the right mood. You just have to be willing. Willing to open the door. Willing to take it slowly. Willing to trust that on the other side of all of it, there is room. There is peace. There is you with a little more space to breathe. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this story meant something to you, please give the video a like. It genuinely helps more people find us. And share it with someone who might be ready to open their own door. Now, next week, I want to talk about something that came up for me during those 3 days, and something I hear from so many of you. What do you do when your family doesn't agree with what to keep or let go? When your children want to hold on to everything? When your siblings have different memories attached to the same objects? When the clearing that should feel freeing turns into an argument? Until then, take care of yourself. Take it one box at a time. And remember what Ruth always used to say, you are stronger than you think. I'll see you next week.